Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, and this is your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we're going to be doing a Capital Cannabis wrap-up. We're going to talk about an e-commerce platform that got $15 million. We're going to talk about an Oregon farm that grows cannabis that got over $12 million when they have 6.5 years oversupply. Probably the best farm out there, in my opinion. We're going to talk about capital raises and how they're kind of slowing down, and just your overall wrap up in the cannabis industry as it pertains to capital raises. On the line with us to help us talk about it is Dan Chemist, our CBD correspondent with Good CBD Products. Hi.
Yeah. This is a deep fake of me. It's not actually here, but a deep fake of me is, and I hope they do a good job representing me.
Yeah, well, you look good.
Thanks, brother.
Let's start off with Medicine Man Technologies. They continued an acquisition spree, according to this Yahoo Finance article, The Week in Cannabis. And so apparently, the Frankfurt-based Cansativa struck a deal to import medical cannabis from Australia, becoming the first European country to strike a deal with the Oceanic nation. Then going down to Vinzan International, they struck a deal to acquire 51% stake of Columbia Dreams Marijuana, opening up their Colombian subsidiary. Tilray, on the other hand, filed an 8K disclosing it had signed a sales agreement with Cohen Company so they can issue and sell shares via Cohen with an offer price of $400 million. And then Cannabico Pharmaceuticals signed an agreement with a technology provider to deploy cannabis technology for the production of a near odorless cannabis. I don't know why you'd want to do that. New Lake Capital Partners announced it completed a private placement of $85.5 million in preferred stock. That's a lot for a private company. So looking at some ETFs that delivered moderate losses over the last 5 trading days, the Horizon Marijuana Life Index has lost 2.6%. The ETF MG Alternative Harvest, ticker symbol MJ, they lost 2%. Advisor Shares Pure Cannabis ETF was down 2%. Cannabis ETF, ticker symbol THCX, went down 3%, and then Amplify Seymour Cannabis ETF decreased 1.7%. I think that's just kind of a reallocation of portfolios right now. It's fairly normal for this time of year. They say that brokers sell in May and go away, and they come back after Labor Day and reallocate. So they'll sell top movers, and a lot of these ETFs just came out. The ETF MG Alternative Harvest symbol MJ was up almost 50% in the first quarter of the year. So obviously shareholders pulling some profit off the table and then reallocating right now. We also have an index for fun, for entertainment purposes only. So check back next week as we kind of look back at the previous crystal ball prediction. We haven't published that because that was our first one, and so we're going to take a look back, and I think you're going to be surprised by our entertainment value on this new cannabis ETF that is AI based. There's a gentleman out there, Rohit, with Sanjeev and Banu Fund, created an AI based algorithm that can go 7 days out, predictive analytics. So very interesting. Again, for entertainment purposes only. A lot of moving and shaking and stuff. And talking about Oregon, we were just down there. TJs Organics. Remember we tried to find TJs? They weren't there at the store. We ended up getting a Cannagar, reviewing that Cannagar, which, by the way, had a harvest date of over a year. And they still sold it at fair price. So I don't even know what we smoked.
Nice. Well, it's funny because, again, when you talk about cool brands and 7 and 8 figure deals, right? And these kinds of things, it's from the perspective of watching an industry mature. Oh my gosh, the TJ story is a really neat story, and especially as a consumer, as somebody who, I guess enjoys top shelf cannabis and all of that stuff. It's also one of those things where it kind of, you feel a little bit of the good of the success for them because you're like, yeah, I support that brand. I like that brand.
I love that brand. The guys at TJs, they sponsored event that we had with Cliff Robinson at the Moda Center, Blazers versus Nugs, when the last season for the Trailblazers in Portland, they played Denver. We had a private suite. TJs was one of the sponsors with Cliff Robinson there. And the flower was so phenomenal that the employees of the Moda Center were running around the NBA arena trying to find out who had the weed. And they came into our suite and they're like, "What are you guys doing here?" And we're like, "We've got approval," and they couldn't believe that we had 6 vendors, including High Times, Dope Magazine, open bar, private bathroom, hors d'oeuvres. It was phenomenal. And TJ's was there, and they had to end up putting in a container and closing it because it just, the smell, the pungent, the aroma, and the perfume, it was so phenomenal. It was great.
Yeah, again, as a as a consumer, the fun of watching, some of the long term, the people who really worked, right? I mean, certainly not everybody can win, right? That's the thing. And it's still, at the same time, it is neat to see some of the winners.
I love that story. It's great. It's phenomenal to know that with a 6.5 year oversupply in Oregon, that farm got $12.5 million more than Dope Magazine got paid for by High Times. And Dope Magazine is in a lot of states with products selling oils and branded pre-rolls. They had social media. They had all these things. And TJ's is literally a commodity. They grow and then they end up selling a product, and they got a ton of money. It just speaks volume to how good that brand is. If you're in Oregon, I don't know what's going to happen after the acquisition. If James Ortiz ends up going somewhere else and they don't have the same people, hopefully those SOPs, standard operating procedures, can remain intact, because I'm telling you, the flower's phenomenal. But moving on to Oregon retailers pulling off vape brands. I got some flack about, the hyperbole about some brands going out of business. If you don't have a lot of SKUs, it's my opinion still that some companies that don't have a lot of product or SKUs could potentially go out of business as, consumers pull back their purchasing decisions until some more regulation gets in place. And we're already seeing it. Bam, Oregon pot retailers begin pulling vape brands in lung scare, according to the Associated Press, published by Yahoo Finance. So we're already kind of seeing that fallout. I didn't know it would happen that fast, but there you go.
Well, again, as a small business operator, there's a couple of ways you can look at something like this, right? You're either running well, and if you're running well, sure, another disruption in business, big deal, we'll get through it, whatever. Or you're running in the margin. And if you're running in the margin, another disruption in business, oh my gosh, is this the one that's going to sink me? And, this, I would say again, this is a real conundrum for the industry. This represents what I would consider a, if not existential, significant crisis. And, I would argue existential. It's going to be interesting to watch the fallout, in that if you think this episode is just closed, okay, it's done, it's been terrible, it's bad, and it's contained, I think you're going to see something different over the next 6 months. I think you're going to see, again, the science is now turning toward this. The regulatory bodies are now turning toward this. Once people start dying or getting maimed, the stakes become so dire, right? And again, I don't think it's alarmist at all to say that, again, if you're operating in the margin as a business in that space, and that is your core space, your world changed, right? Your world has literally changed. So.
And it's not just cannabis, right? There's been a huge push in beverage, sugary pop and sodas. They've been feeling the squeeze a lot. And so there's been a big shift towards more healthy alternatives. And so I just saw an article today that says, "Oh, don't vape. You might as well smoke a joint." And yet we saw from a Straight Line Analytics, an article from there where there was 10 testing of pre-rolls and all 10 failed. There was 5 infused, 5 non-infused, and all of them had mold. So it's the same thing as the cereals having glyphosate in it, Roundup. So they're spraying these pesticides on the wheat, and then that's staying within it as it's processed into cereal. Your children are literally eating Roundup. And so whether it's mold in cannabis or Roundup in Cheerios, we want a healthier product, and that's just going to require more oversight and maybe USDA organic certification, or whatever gives you peace of mind. We need to kind of move forward to doing that, I guess. And so you're right, it's going to affect a lot of businesses. And I think with this other article on Yahoo Finance about e-commerce sites, that's really a great way to try and increase your sales if you're able to do that in state, as well as CBD companies doing it internationally and interstate. There's an article here that's Dutchy, a startup e-commerce company, raised $15 million for a site me and you hit boots on the ground 2 years ago called Xylem. And here you go, just another kind of competitor to Kush.com as e-commerce sort of hits that wave as more and more companies are trying to increase their sales.
Yeah, brokering product, right? The concept of, okay, I have a site, I'm going to match buyers and sellers, and then I'll just take a little bit on either side. The amazing aspect of one, some of the businesses that we work with are doing it and doing it very well already, right? And two, again, real money at somebody who can say, well, we're going to be a near peer to those guys. And again, if you want a good business trick, go find somebody who's doing something successful and well, and then go make a near peer to that, right? And go get funded. It's a great trick.
Right. And that's a Series A $15 million round. Some of the investors include Snoop Dogg's Casa Verde Capital, which I pitched their group a joint rolling machine 5 years ago now. Kevin Durant was also on that. DoorDash founder was in there. Shutterstock CEO. So definitely gaining some interesting folks that kind of want more e-commerce options. They have 450 dispensaries across 18 states paying a monthly service fee. Dutchy reached a $140 million annual gross merchandising volume, according to the company. That's not bad.
Well, at the last show we were at, I had a chance to talk with some folks who were in the seed to sale space, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole thing, again, of technology companies working in the cannabis space, in that, again, growth with regards to distribution and sales, so impacted by these things. I mean, when you see the reality on the ground of failed systems, right? The value of systems that work. And this is where, again, to some of our friends, like our pals at Kush, and to cool new crew like Dutchy, right? That whole thing of, again, the tech space is actually, tech and science are a couple of the spaces where, just from an investment perspective, a lot of times I think they're overlooked. Like, this is what Josh Costney was saying at the Cannabis Science show, basically, was, look, the science is a huge space with regards to opportunity. Yeah, funny. Again, for what we do and who we talk to, it all makes sense.
Yeah, accurate dosing is a subset of the second largest investment vehicle this year, which is data and accurate dosing technology. And so for more news from this week with this Yahoo Finance article is Cansendence. They closed a $27.5 million Series C preferred funding. It's going to go into vapes and ingestibles, as well as supporting the current growth in Massachusetts, Nevada, Canada. So that's interesting. Green Lane Holdings entered into a tenant representation agreement with Jamestown for the strategic North American expansion of a leading real estate investment and management company internationally. So that could be interesting. It's more like a real estate investment trust. Helix acquired a blockchain-based wholesale cannabis and hemp exchange, Americanex. So blockchain-based e-commerce site that's very accurate accounting, automated. So I'll see where that goes. However, they began integrating with industry-leading seed-to-sale software platform BuyTrack. Not a fan. definitely wouldn't even bother looking at that. That's my opinion. Organigram Holdings said it obtained approval from Health Canada for licensing 17 cultivation rooms. Now they're making 40,000 pre-rolls a day. So I want to see what they do with 17 more cultivation rooms. All in all, cannabis capital raises slow down alongside capital markets. I guess that's the point.
Here's the thing, right? If you're part of those moves, these are really exciting things. And if you're looking for trends, right? The whole reason that you would listen to the Talking Hedge, your cannabis business podcast, is to hear those trends and to understand. And at the same time, no doubt, if you really want to, dig deep, there's more research to be done, right? Because again, a lot of these are nuanced moves, to say the least, right?
Mm-hmm. Now we edited out some of that stuff because it wasn't really worth talking about. But here's the recap: the same number of capital raises closed the last week as the same week in the year prior. However, overall capital raises were lower this year, primarily driven by the current capital market slowdown in cannabis. So the article goes on to say that while the slowdown is likely to persist, that they expect activity in the markets to accelerate towards the year end into 2020. So of the 7 capital raises, only 1 utilized an equity structure. However, the debt raise was also the largest tracked in the week. Now, my personal opinion is that that's a normalization. If there's more confidence that where you're willing to take debt over equity, that's a good sign. And so of the 7 capital raise transactions, 1 was closed by an ancillary business and the rest involving licensed operators, being cultivation, retail, infused products, and extracts. So the largest raise track was closed by a Colorado-based licensed operator. Other mergers and acquisitions tracked 5 closed M&As in the past week, count far fewer than the 9 closed the previous year. So of the 5 that closed, involving public companies as the buyers and private companies as the targets, the largest acquirer last week was a Canadian licensed producer, Kronos, acquiring an established national cannabidiol or CBD consumer good brand, Redwood Holding Group. And acquisitions of retail locations already selling cannabis products or those that can be converted into cannabis storefronts continue as vertically integrated operators seek greater access to consumers and more sales points. According to this Yahoo Finance article, capital raises slowing down. So looking at the number of raises this year versus last year, it was the same, but the amount is a lot less. So capital raises for the same M&A deals are about half. It seems like there's maybe a plateau as people are looking at the speculation in Canada kind of maxing out or waiting for the 2.0 release between October and December for edibles and beverages before they look to see what the public markets are going to do, or just come back to the US because the valuations are a lot lower. There's not as much speculation with the private company as in the US, especially with California. People are probably on the sidelines still waiting to see if any new regulations come out, like the new one in Washington that bans CBD edibles and beverages. I think there's a lot of capital on the sidelines just waiting to see what to do.
In the straight up cannabis space, no doubt. Right now, the common question that I get hit with all the time is, okay, revenue. I don't think it's slowed down quite as much, I guess it would be my armchair take, if you will.
I mean, it's still going. It's going strong, and I think as the market starts to correct or look a little bit too frothy, we've said that sin stocks have an inverse relationship to the overall market. So whether that's tobacco or alcohol, cannabis, or defensive stocks, those go up when everything else is going down. So as people kind of shift, reallocate their portfolios and switch investment vehicles from declining to inclining, I think we're going to see a huge speculative bubble to be concerned about, but nonetheless take advantage of while it occurs. So the U.S. is going to open up, and it's going to open up strong. You're just going to have to come back to the Talking Hedge and see it for yourself.
I love a speculative bubble.
So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.